going to show you how to make a hand-drawn element into a symbol in Illustrator. So here I have a hand-drawn puffin that I made, and you can scan these in, photograph using a camera or using your phone. You can also use the camera that's on your computer and photograph these in, and then edit them in Photoshop if you need to brighten them up before you pull them into Illustrator. So we're going to go ahead and go to our window option at the top here, and I'm going to go down to image trace and select that. Now, one other thing that I like to do when I use image trace in Illustrator is I like to make sure that my workspace is set to Essentials Classic, and that just allows me to see all of my options up here on this top options bar, which I like. Now when I image trace, I like to go ahead and hit preview, just because hopefully if we're working with graphics, we're all visual people, so this allows us to kind of see what our image is going to look like. Now you notice image tracing takes a while, it takes a lot of memory, so it is a slow process, but that's okay. Now right now I lost a lot of detail when I did that initial image trace of my puffin, so I can go through and I can make some changes in image trace. If you don't see these advanced options that I just closed down here, you can click on this little arrow and expand those out and see those. Now notice that there are paths, corners, and noise. Paths will kind of determine how many paths are visible within your image trace. Corners will, as much as it sounds like, it will be how many corners are visible, and then noise is kind of how staticky, I guess you could say, your image is, how smooth it is. So if you take the noise down, it's going to smooth that out a little bit more. If you take it up, it's going to be a little bit more staticky, but there may be more detail. So it just kind of depends. Also notice that there are different modes that you can trace in. Now I want this image to be black and white. I want it to be rather linear, but you could go in and make it a color image. You could make it a grayscale image, and that is also going to give you probably a lot more detail than you would get with black and white. So I'm going to stop this because it also will take a much longer time to create that color image. So I'm going to go back to black and white here. And again, that's going to take a little bit of time. That's okay. Okay, so I'm actually going to adjust the threshold here too, and I didn't talk about that. So threshold is, I tend to think of like when you go towards the more, you're going to get more black, you're going to get more of the actual drawn design, but you can go too far with this and then it can kind of lose detail, or it can get a little jumbled. So that's why I like to preview it as well, because then you can see kind of what that finished outcome is. So it's trying to kind of find a balance here between detail and still having that essence of a hand-drawn sketch. It's not too heavy, it's not too kind of digitized. And this is looking pretty good to me right now. I'm liking this. So if you're happy with everything that you see, you can go up here to your options menu and you can just click expand. And now what I've actually done is I have created a vector graphic of my original sketch here. Now notice that I have this bounding box around my puffin. One thing that I can do is I can go in with my magic wand and I can select that area and then just delete. Now what I did when I deleted that is I also deleted, I believe, let me see here. Yes, I also deleted any white that was behind my actual puffin. So to put that back in, it's pretty easy to do. I'm actually going to grab a color here. I'm going to grab red, and I'm just going to draw a circle behind my puffin. It's in front of my puffin now, but I will put it behind. So to put anything behind, you can hold a command key down and then use your brackets to move that forward or back, or you can go to Object, Arrange, and then you can use any of these options to bring it forward and back, and you can see the keyboard shortcuts off to the side. So I'm going to go into my selection tool, click off to the side, and then go into my blob brush, choose white, expand this up a little bit, and start to paint over my puffin. Now the blob brush, if you haven't used it before, it's a really cool tool. It actually will create filled shapes or objects. So you can see that's a filled kind of path or a closed path with a fill instead of just a path that has a width profile to it. So it just kind of creates these big shapes, these big objects, and you can just keep adding and adding as long as while you're painting, that white is selected. Now again, I'm just going to go ahead and move that behind my puffin, but I'm still working in that. You can see where that's selected. I'm going to go ahead and keep working and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so here you can see the white that I've filled in behind my puffin. I'm going to go back and erase out areas where I've overshot here, and I can just do that by hitting Shift E to get into my eraser tool. The keyboard shortcut for the blob brush is Shift B, and the keyboard shortcut for the eraser tool is Shift E. And the eraser tool will kind of look like you're painting on more white, but it's actually just taking out these areas as long as you are selected in them. So still make sure you are selected into that white that you've just drawn, and then you should be able to go in Shift E and take out the excess with your eraser. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with this, and then I'll come back here in just a sec. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And because I have that red behind the puffin, I can see exactly where I have the white. So the final thing that I want to do before I save this as a symbol is I want to get rid of this red, although I do kind of like the way that puffin looks on the red. But I'm going to delete that, and then I'm going to draw a box over the puffin using my selection tool, and I'm going to group the white and the black by hitting Command G. If you don't have that option with the computer that you're using, you can also go to Object and Group, and that will do the same thing. So now I am ready to save this little fellow as a symbol. Now I can go to my symbols menu by clicking on this little symbol over here, or if you don't see that, you can go to Window and go down to Symbols, and that will pop that open as well. I'm just going to grab my puffin and drag him into the symbols window and save him as a graphic static symbol. I'm going to call him puffin and hit OK. And now you can see my puffin has shown up in my symbols. Now I can use this puffin with any of my symbol sprayer, symbol adjustment kind of tools over there, and I'll show you those in a second. I can also just place him in just by placing an instance of the symbol by clicking here. Notice that also, even though I have taken out that background, once my puffin becomes a symbol, he has a little bounding box, but it goes right up to the edge of the drawing. So that's how you know that has changed from just that sketch that I've made to now a symbol. So I can go ahead and delete this. If I want to have that on the page again, I can just again click this place symbol instance, and there it is. Now I'm going to delete that again and show you another option, what I was talking about before with my symbol sprayer tool. I can now go in and I can spray multiple puffins. I can also go in and do any of these adjustments on those puffins that I have sprayed. So I can shift them, which is exactly what that sounds. You're kind of moving them around. I can scrunch them, kind of get them closer together, depending on where I'm clicking. I can size them. So if I click, that'll make them bigger. If I hold the Option key down and click, that'll make them smaller. And whenever you're working with the symbol tool, when you have multiple instances in one kind of spray of puffins here, notice that all of these are kind of being treated as one group. They aren't individual objects. So that's why we have to go through these symbol options instead of altering them each individually. Now that doesn't mean that we can't expand them. So if you get to a point where you want to go ahead and expand all of these individual or all of these symbols that are one thing, we can go up to Object and Expand and then hit OK. And now notice what we've done is we've actually made individual instances of those symbols. If we click those and go up in Object Expand again, then we have taken them back to kind of that original image that I had where I had it all path-based. Notice they're still grouped though. So to ungroup them, I can go to Object, Ungroup, or you can do Command-Shift-G and that'll do that as well. And now I have just this puffin. Now the one thing you may want to be careful of though is, just want to make sure, no. Sometimes that may also ungroup the white that you have behind the puffin. So if you have a white background and you have a white kind of fill on the puffin, you might want to double check that just to make sure that you still have that there. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. So if you are editing these things, you may want to, and you don't want to change that symbol permanently, make sure that you expand these so that they're no longer symbols. And then you can always go back in and save a new instance of that symbol in a different color or however you have wanted to change it. When you're done with all of the symbols that you would like to save, you can go into your Symbol Libraries menu and save symbols, and you can title them whatever, and then they will show up later in the user-defined symbols down here. So have fun creating with symbols and enjoy.